Having just returned from work, Tom was surprised to see that something strange was happening in the sky outside. He immediately ran to his backyard to get a better look, but saw that a thick, dark fog had blanketed the entire town's sky. What felt strangest to him was the sudden, strong wind blowing around him. It defied all laws of physics and was moving in the opposite direction toward the center of the storm. But in just a little while, that strong wind also stopped in a strange way, as if someone had suddenly pressed the pause button. Yet the strange sight in the sky didn't vanish. Instead, it began gathering energy, and then suddenly, several powerful lightning strikes hit him. At first, Tom had no idea of the severity of this, nor did he know that a massive catastrophe was about to befall the entire town. Only when he heard a loud thunderclap from very close by did he realize the danger, and he immediately hid in a room with his daughter. That strange phenomenon had not stopped yet. Seeing the terrifying lightning striking outside, Tom comforted his daughter, saying, "Don't be afraid, because lightning never strikes the same place twice." But as soon as he said that, the terrifying lightning began striking repeatedly and precisely in that very spot, something that had never happened before, The father and daughter started trembling, hiding under the table in fear. But the lightning stopped much sooner than they had expected. In just a few moments, total silence fell outside. Only then did Tom timidly muster the courage to get up and look outside. But he soon realized that the situation was quite dire. Due to the strange incident that had just occurred, not only had the power gone out in the entire area, but all electronic devices, including mobile phones, had also stopped working. When Tom left the house to look around afterward, he saw that all the cars on the road had also broken down and were parked on the side. The mechanic nearby told him that the starters of all the cars had burned out in an instant, and it would be useless to even install new ones. Tom casually advised him to try changing the coil once. He had no idea that this small bit of help would go on to save his entire family's lives later. Along with the crowd of people gathered there, Tom also reached the spot where the lightning had struck. Everyone saw that a very deep crater had formed there due to the blast. Tom carefully picked up a piece of stone that was lying there. He thought it would be very hot because of the lightning strike. The moment he touched it, it was cold as ice. While everyone was puzzled, sounds started coming from the deep crater under their feet. Then cracks started appearing, spreading rapidly in all directions. As the cracks widened, they tore through all the surrounding buildings. Immediately after, the ground shook violently, and a massive crater caved in. Then, before the shocked eyes of everyone, the sunken ground suddenly jerked upward, as if something was about to tear through the earth and emerge. The scene there was becoming even stranger and more dangerous. Even the car that had just fallen into the crater was launched back out with a jolt. Then, before everyone's wide-eyed gaze, a massive three-legged monster emerged from underground. In front of that giant monster, humans looked as small as ants. Everyone was terrified and tried to run away from there. But for a long time, the monster didn't do anything. It only emitted a very ear-splitting, strange sound every now and then. People's curiosity began to outweigh their fear. Some brave people stopped to watch it, and some were those who didn't fear death. They even went closer to it themselves. The result was that those very people became the first victims of the monster. Only then did people realize how dangerous it was, but it was too late to escape. The streets of the entire town suddenly turned into a graveyard. Anyone who came into the path of its laser light was turned to ash in an instant. Fortunately, Tom acted quickly and was a bit further away, which helped him narrowly escape. He managed to get out of the three-legged monster's range at the very last moment. Meanwhile, all the buildings behind him had turned into rubble. Even after returning home, Tom was in a state of terror. He couldn't believe that the hellish scene he had just witnessed was real. But the human ash fallen all over his body kept reminding him that he had to flee the town immediately. There was no time to explain anything to his two children. So a panicked Tom told his son to pack his bags quickly so they could leave this dangerous place as soon as possible. As they left, he didn't forget to take his old pistol because no one knew what other dangers they might encounter while fleeing. Fortunately, the mechanic had taken Tom's advice and fixed a car. Now there was only trouble, and no time left to think. Tom quickly got into the car with his children and asked the mechanic to join them for his own safety. But the mysterious mechanic was still grumbling and complaining. Seeing the monster approaching from behind, Tom was forced to shut the car door and drove off at full speed, and just as he had expected, the next moment all the buildings behind them were destroyed in an instant by that powerful laser. For those who couldn't escape the town, there was no hope left for survival. At that moment, the highway outside was filled only with broken installed cars. It was clear that the destruction caused by the three-legged monster was far worse than they had imagined. Soon, Tom arrived with his children at his ex-wife's house in the nearby city. But strangely, there was no one home at that time. For safety, they decided to spend the night in the basement and figure out a plan. When morning came, morning came. In truth, it was a wise decision because as soon as midnight struck, those terrifying, strange events began again. The three were jolted awake by that same familiar flash of lightning. Immediately after, the ground began to shake violently. The situation had become exactly as it was back in their town. Amidst the lightning and that ear-splitting sound, Tom rushed his children into a hidden room, and at that very moment, a massive blast engulfed the basement where they had been staying. The next morning, when Tom went outside, he discovered that a large passenger plane had crashed there due to the monster's attack. All the plane's passengers were gone, and only their scattered belongings remained. But Tom found some people alive amidst the wreckage. He thought they were the passengers from the plane, but in reality, they were people from a nearby TV station. After talking to them, Tom learned more about those monsters. Videos from different locations made it clear that these terrifying three-legged monsters weren't just one or two, but had emerged from underground in many cities at almost the same time, turning everything into rubble. These monsters were ruthless and powerful, and wherever they went, no news ever came out. Dozens of major cities, including New York, London, and Washington, had already been destroyed. Like Tom, the female reporter also believed that these machines had perhaps been buried deep underground for a long time. The aliens entered them through lightning strikes and activated these machines to take over the Earth. She had barely finished speaking when strange noises began to rise from the distance. Hearing this, the reporter and her companions immediately left the area. Tom didn't dare stay there any longer either, and immediately took his family and started fleeing again. He intended to head to his ex-wife's mother's house in Boston, thinking she would definitely have gone there, but they hadn't been on the road long when his young daughter stubbornly wandered off toward the river. There she witnessed a horrific sight that she would never forget for the rest of her life. Countless corpses suddenly floated up on the water, completely filling the river. Seeing this, the girl started gasping in terror. Fortunately, her father arrived in the nick of time and pulled her into an embrace. Afterward, they got back in the car and continued on. Driving like this, night fell, and they finally reached near the harbor heading toward Boston. But a massive crowd of people fleeing for their lives had already gathered there. Seeing this, Tom became extremely alert because he knew how dangerous humans could become in such difficult times. When everyone else was forced to travel on foot, their only running vehicle was no less than a treasure that everyone wanted, and that's exactly what happened. The mob surrounded their car from all sides. At first, the people were just pleading to be let into the car, but soon they became intent on forcing the vehicle to a stop. Some crazed individuals even started trying to break the car to force it to stop. Tom tried to speed away to get out of there. But in an attempt to save a woman standing in the middle of the road, he swerved suddenly and the car crashed straight into a pole. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the entire mob swarmed the car. They started smashing the glass like madmen, and without caring about the pain, began pulling out the broken shards with their bare hands. Eventually, some burly men forcibly dragged Tom out of the car, and when he resisted, they beat him severely. His son Robbie tried to help, but he too got buried somewhere in that ferocious mob. Fearing his young daughter might get hurt, a panicked Tom fired a shot into the air to stop the crowd. But he didn't know that he wasn't the only one there with a gun. Facing death, Tom had to give in. Picked up his daughter in his arms and handed his car over to them. The man drove away with the car as if it were nothing. But no one noticed that someone else had picked up the gun that had fallen on the ground. Tom had just reached a restaurant away from the crowd with his children when loud gunfire began to echo. It was clear that the bloodshed which started over the car had not ended yet. This is the side of humanity during catastrophe that is even more terrifying than the monsters. Anyone could take someone's life just for a car, and it was happening constantly outside. And seeing all this, Tom broke down and for the first time cried in front of his children. But seeing the children even more scared, he had to be strong as a father, and he set off on foot with his kids, along with the crowd toward the harbor. When they all reached the railway track, the train crossing gate suddenly dropped and people had to stop. But the thing that passed by after that was just a few train carriages burning in flames. It seemed like there was no place left in this world that was still safe. It was unknown if those monsters had attacked this train, or if it was the result of humans fighting each other for survival. After this, Tom's family reached the harbor along with the crowd. The government had arranged some ships there so that people could be taken to a safe place. Everyone felt that if they could just get on the ship, they would be away from danger, and the monsters wouldn't be able to harm them. But they didn't know that the brightly lit harbor had already become the primary target of those aliens. The little girl who was about to board the ship suddenly saw something very terrifying. On the distant mountain peak, a gigantic, multi-legged monster had suddenly appeared. As a scream echoed across the peaceful harbor, the people in line saw the terrifying monster, and the orderly lines suddenly erupted into chaos. Everyone wanted to get on the ship first to save their lives. Seeing this situation, the ship's captain immediately refused to take more people and, without caring for anyone, started the ship to get it out of there. Just then, more monsters arrived, and their eyes locked onto the people who couldn't make it onto the ship. Fortunately, Tom had somehow managed to get on that ship with his family. They thought they were safe, but then another horrific sight appeared before them. A huge whirlpool suddenly started forming in the calm water as if something was about to come out from within. The very next moment, a massive wave rose from the whirlpool, and another terrifying monster emerged from the water. Without a second thought, it flipped the ship that was in its path. The people who were just celebrating getting on the ship were now trapped in even bigger trouble. Those who knew how to swim somehow reached the surface, but as soon as they poked their heads out, the monster's tentacles grabbed them. People were completely helpless in the water, and the monster was killing them with ease. Fortunately, Tom and his family had fallen some distance away from the ship. This allowed them to narrowly escape and swim to the shore. But the danger had not passed yet, because on the shore, many more monsters were killing humans like madmen. The three of them kept running to save their lives without stopping for a moment. The countless bones falling from the sky along the way used to be living humans once. By morning, the people who had survived this alien massacre gathered in one place again. The army sent by the government finally arrived to launch a counterattack. Flames began to rise everywhere on the mountain in front. Tanks from below and fighter jets from above attacked the monster with full force. But in front of the aliens' advanced technology, human weapons were of no use. They couldn't even leave a scratch on the monster's armor. Seeing that even the army couldn't do any harm to the monster, filled with intensity, Robbie ran straight toward the battlefield without caring about anyone. Robbie wanted to join this do-or-die battle against the aliens at any cost. As a father, Tom was forced to leave his young daughter in a safe place and go after Robbie. But no matter how much Tom tried to reason with him, his blood was boiling. Robbie would not budge an inch. He said that instead of hiding in fear and running like a dog, he would rather die fighting those monsters on the battlefield. Turning back, Tom saw that some good people had found his daughter alone and were taking her with them. Helpless, Tom had to give in to his son's stubbornness and immediately ran back to his daughter. But when he turned back to look for Robbie, he saw that the army's defense had collapsed and that horrific slaughter had begun once again. Seeing this, Tom thought it was best to flee from there. Finally, with the help of a kind stranger, he hid in a basement with him. When the entire human army had been wiped out, there was no hope left for Robbie, who had jumped into the battlefield to survive. That stranger fully understood the pain of Tom losing his family, because his own family had also been killed by those three-legged monsters a short while ago. But just as the two were talking, the ground began to shake violently again. It was clear that the three-legged monster was still nearby and hadn't gone away. That man had now lost everything. Therefore, he was desperate to fight that monster to the death if given a chance. But Tom wanted to survive with his daughter at any cost. Suddenly, there was a deathly silence outside, and the next moment, a piece of wood fell to the ground. Immediately after that, the monster's large tentacles came inside. Seeing this, Tom quickly hid with his daughter. If they had quietly waited for the monster to leave, they might have been saved. But the man, burning with the fire of revenge, did not want to miss this opportunity. He picked up an axe and was about to strike the tentacle when Tom stopped his stupidity just in time. The man also calmed down quickly. But as he was tiptoeing toward Tom, he accidentally made a noise. The big-eyed tentacle's attention was immediately drawn toward him. In a panic, Tom immediately grabbed a mirror and used it as a shield to hide. With this trick, he somehow managed to stay hidden in his spot. After looking for a while when the eye didn't see anything, it started to go back. But then suddenly the daughter's foot slipped. Although she pulled her foot back immediately, that sound caught the monster's eye on the shoe sticking out. But when the tentacle came to look behind the glass, there was no one there except that shoe. Finally, finding nothing, the tentacle with the eye slowly withdrew. The three of them, hiding near the stairs, then took a long breath of relief. But just then, the water near their feet began to stir and they saw some real aliens coming inside. Actually, that previous inspection was just to ensure whether the place was safe or not. When those aliens started greedily rummaging through the items humans had left behind. One alien even hung from a pipe and started drinking water. This was in fact the very reason they had attacked Earth. But these ugly aliens did not know that the same water they had fought so hard to reach Earth for would eventually become the biggest cause of their death. The three of them knew that place very well, so they kept changing their positions stealthily and remained out of the alien sight. But then that man was overcome by madness again. He picked up his gun and got ready to kill the aliens. At the last moment, Tom stopped him again, because he knew that even if they killed these few aliens, there would be no chance for them to survive and escape. Might escape. Both of them grappled with each other, holding their weapons. Neither was willing to back down. Fortunately, the aliens, busy rummaging through the supplies, did not notice them. As soon as the man snatched the gun and regained the upper hand, the loud sound of that three-legged monster suddenly echoed outside. It seemed as if they had been summoned and all those aliens returned one by one. The very next moment, they saw another terrifying shadow. A three-legged monster was extracting blood and flesh from captured humans and processing it to spray it out as a special type of fertilizer. It seemed as if they wanted to change Earth's environment in this way. Seeing this heart-wrenching sight, the man completely broke down and started screaming like a madman. He now wanted to dig the ground and hide deeper. Fire of revenge in him had now been completely extinguished. Tom feared that his voice would attract the monster. Therefore, he began trying to calm him down. But he realized that the man had now completely lost his mind. Tom knew that if this continued, this man would get them all killed one day. To keep his daughter safe, Tom had to make a very difficult decision. Thus, he first blindfolded his daughter Rachel so that at such a young age, she wouldn't see what was about to happen. After calming his daughter down, Tom went into the room with firm resolve and closed the door. About 10-15 minutes later, the screaming, shouting, and sounds of a struggle from inside went quiet. Exhausted, Tom came out of the room alone. Only then did the father and daughter find a little bit of peace. Completely broken inside, Tom fell into a deep sleep. But little Rachel, terrified, could not get any sleep. As if she had sensed something. She got up slowly, and as she turned, that terrifying, big-eyed tentacle was staring right at her. The poor little girl screamed out loud in fear. Hearing the scream, Tom immediately got up and stood as a shield in front of his daughter. He picked up an axe and began hacking at the tentacle like a madman. But in the process, he didn't notice his daughter, who, out of extreme fear, had screamed and run outside. By the time Tom finished off the threat by cutting the tentacle, he saw that his daughter had vanished. Panicked, Tom ran outside to find her. But upon coming out, he saw that the whole world had turned blood red. The sight of the destruction was even more terrifying than hell itself. Tom started calling out his daughter's name frantically, but his voice immediately attracted a three-legged monster to the spot. He quickly jumped into a car parked nearby. But the monster's tentacle lifted the car with Tom inside into the air and then slammed it hard onto the ground. Through the broken glass of the car, Tom finally saw Rachel standing at a distance. But now she had become the target of that three-legged monster. Tom ran towards his daughter like a madman, but it was too late. He could only watch helplessly as his daughter was pulled into the air right before his eyes. Tom immediately entered a nearby army vehicle and found some grenades there. Without thinking, he threw a grenade toward the monster. Although it didn't damage the monster's armor, Tom managed to grab its attention. Tom did not try to escape, and the monster grabbed him too, throwing him into one of the iron cages hanging on its sides. That cage was filled with all the humans who had just been captured and not yet killed. At this moment, all their hopes were completely shattered, because the monster would take one human every few minutes. No one knew whose turn it would be to become fertilizer next. As soon as the tentacle grabbed another unfortunate man and pulled him up, Tom found his scared daughter in a corner of the cage. After calling out to her for a long time, she finally came back to her senses a little. But just then, the monster's tentacles started grabbing people indiscriminately again. When Tom saw that his daughter was being targeted this time, he immediately lunged and lay over her, shielding her tightly in his arms. The tentacle had gripped both his legs and was about to pull him up when, at the last moment, Tom picked up the grenades to save his daughter. The soldier was watching all of this. He understood what Tom was about to do. He immediately stepped forward, grabbed Tom, and started a tug-of-war with the monster. Seeing him, the others also gained courage, and instead of dying silently, they all joined in to save Tom. This tug-of-war between the monster and the humans lasted for about half a minute, and finally, they all managed to save Tom together. But in the meantime, Tom had pulled the pins from the grenades and left them up there. The very next moment, the grenades detonated from within, putting the three-legged monster to death. The cages hanging on both sides of the monster fell, and Tom's cage happened to get stuck in a large tree. As soon as they reached the ground safely, the badly injured monster went silent forever. In this way, they once again narrowly escaped the jaws of death. After walking countless miles with a crowd of people, fleeing for their lives, the father and daughter finally reached Boston, where his ex-wife's mother lived. Although this city had also been attacked by those monsters, but at this moment a strange silence hung over the place. Tom casually picked and examined one of those red plants grown from human blood, only to find it was nearly dried up and turned to powder at the slightest touch. When they reached the city streets, they saw a three-legged monster lying injured on a building. At first, Tom thought perhaps the army had found a way to kill them, but upon asking, he learned that wasn't the case at all. It seemed as if something had gone wrong with the monsters themselves, because overnight almost all of the monsters stopped functioning. But not all the monsters were dead yet. As they moved forward, another monster appeared before the people, though it didn't look well either, and it was struggling to walk. Tom, who was about to enter a shelter, suddenly spotted the monster and saw birds landing right on the three-legged machine. This clearly meant that their powerful protective shield was now gone. Seeing this, Tom immediately alerted the soldiers present there. The soldiers understood instantly, picked up their weapons, and attacked the monster. Facing the full force of the army and a hail of bullets, the unshielded monster could only take the hits. Within a few moments, it couldn't withstand the assault and crashed to the ground. Soon, the soldiers surrounded the fallen monster's machine from all sides. People who had fled there also gathered around to see what was going on. The alien operating the machine was struggling to get out of the cockpit, but it died just as it managed to get halfway out. After surviving this great catastrophe, Tom took his daughter to her grandmother's house. Upon arriving, he was pleasantly surprised to find that his ex-wife and her family had luckily survived the destruction. But for Tom, the greatest joy was his son, Robbie, whom he had assumed was no longer in this world. He was standing right in front of him, safe and sound. Having returned from such a horrific brush with death, the distance and grievances between father and son vanished and they embraced. When everything had calmed down, human scientists discovered the cause of the alien's sudden death. In reality, the moment they stepped on Earth and touched the water here, their death was sealed. The ones who killed them were none other than the tiny, omnipresent microbes of Earth, These were the same tiny organisms that human bodies had gained immunity against after millions of years of evolution. But the aliens' bodies could not withstand this small life, and they all perished. If you've watched the whole video, let me know in the comments how you liked it. Also, please support me by leaving a like and subscribing to the channel.